Check to make sure. Yeah, we are live. Okay. Let's get going. Okay. Chat. Okay, we're going to try the Madhurashtakam. Madhuram, Madhuram, Madhanam, Madhuram, Nayanam, Madhuram, Ashitam, Madhuram, Dayam, Madhuram, Gamanam, Madhuram, Urari Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Vachanam, Madhuram, Janitam, Madhuram, Utsanam, Madhuram, Valitam, Madhuram, Jalitam, Madhuram, Kamitam, Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Venur Madhura, Renu Madhura, Nir Madhura, Vado Madhura, Jam Madhuram, Sakyam Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Itam Madhuram, Itam Madhuram, Tam Madhuram, Tam Madhuram, Ram Madhuram, Ilakam Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Rana Madhuram, Rana Madhuram, Rana Madhuram, Ramana Madhuram, Amita Madhuram, Jamita Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Jar Madhuram, Malamudura, Lomuna Madhura, Viji Madhuram, Lila Madhuram, Kamana Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Be Madhura, Gila Madhura, Yutam Madhuram, Utam Madhuram, Shtam Madhuram, Shtam Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Ha Madhura, Kafo Madhura, Yastir Madhura, Shustir Madhura, Anita Madhuram, Anita Madhuram, Madhurani Patera, Gilam, Madhuram, Adara Madhuram, Adara Manoram Nayana Manoram Ashitam Manoram Dayam Manoram Anna Manoram Murani Patera Gilam Manoram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Paravidikacharya, also Tada Satashi Shiva, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami Mahashila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Machuranam Ki Jai, Jagadasami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari 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 Bol. Nama Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharani, Nivashesha Shunyavadi, Paschatya Desha Tarni. So, let me read the translation to this nice prayer by Sri Ballabhacharya. It's called the Madhurashtakam. It's about Krishna. His lips are sweet, his face is sweet, his eyes are sweet, his smile is sweet, his heart is sweet, his gait is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His words are sweet, his character is sweet, his dress is sweet. His belly folds are sweet, his movements are sweet, his wandering is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His flute is sweet. His footdust is sweet. His hands are sweet. His feet are sweet. His dancing is sweet. His friendship is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His singing is sweet. His yellow cloth is sweet. His eating is sweet. His sleeping is sweet. His beauty is sweet. His tilak is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His deeds are sweet. His liberating is sweet. His stealing is sweet. His love sports are sweet. His oblations are sweet. His tranquility is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His gunjaberry necklace is sweet. His flowery garland is sweet. His Jamuna river is sweet. His ripples are sweet. His water is sweet. His lotuses are sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His gopis are sweet. His pastimes are sweet. His union is sweet. His food is sweet. His delight is sweet. His courtesy is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor's sweetness. His gopis are sweet. His cows are sweet. His staff is sweet. His creation is sweet. His trampling is sweet. His fruitfulness is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. So, Madhurashtakam by Sripad Vallabhacharya. So, very nice song. So, now let us go to read Krishna book. So, Om Gana Timirandasha Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigarave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, we are reading from the 82nd chapter of the Krishna book, and we're going to share the screen right now. This chapter is about Lord Krishna and Balaram meeting the residents of Vrindavan, but not in Vrindavan. They're meeting the residents of Vrindavan at Kurukshetra. And this is the model for the Rath Yatra ceremony, interestingly enough. So, chapter 82, Lord Krishna and Balaram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavana. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in the great city of Dwarka, there was a rare occasion of a full solar eclipse, such as takes place at the end of every kalpa or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swarga Loka. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka. It's a very interesting place, too. The Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parashuram performed great sacrifices there after killing all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. When Lord Parashuram killed all the Kshatriyas, their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parashuram dug 5 big lakes at Samanta Panchaka and filled them with this blood. Lord Parashuram is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in the Ishopanishad, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet although Lord Parashuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, he performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parashuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parashuram considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more culpable are we for such abominable, unsanctioned acts? Thus, from time immemorial, the killing of living entities is prohibited all over the world. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, excuse me, all important persons from all parts of Bhartavarsha visited the holy place of pilgrimage. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elder, elderly persons were Krura, Vasudev, and Ugrasena, and among the younger generation were Gada, Prajuna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty, who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Prajuna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sarada, remained in Dwarka to protect the city. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, which resembled the airplanes of the demigods, and which were pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. Some of the Yadus rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men, whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods in heaven. After arriving at Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths ceremoniously with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras, and they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special features of these cows was they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. After the eclipse, all the members of the Yadu dynasty again took their baths in the lakes created by Lord Parashuram. Then they sumptuously fed the Brahmanas with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. Prabhupada said, unless something is cooked in ghee, which is basically clarified butter, it's considered raw. Prabhupada wanted the preparations for the deities to be cooked in ghee. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. Here Prabhupada talks about it. One is called raw food and the other is called cooked food. Raw food does not indicate raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, rice, dal, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads. But puris, kachoris, samosas, sweet balls, and so on are called cooked foods. All the Brahmanas invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic ceremonies performed by the karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his ambition is sense gratification, good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was different. Their ambition was to offer Krishna perpetual devotion with faith. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. In going to take their baths at the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or in feeding the Brahmins in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipable Lord was Krishna and no one else. After the Brahmanas are fed, it is the custom for the hosts, with their permission, to accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the Brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shady trees, and when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. There were the rulers of the Matsya province, Ushinhara province, Koshala province, Vidarbha province, Kuru province, Srinjaya province, Kamboja province, Kekaya province, Madras province, Kunti province, Anartha province, Kerala province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties and some were friends. But above all, the visitors from Vrindavan were most prominent. The residents of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, had been living in great anxiety because of separation from Krishna and Balaram. Taking advantage of the solar eclipse, they all came to see their life and soul, Krishna and Balaram. Let me just check on the volume here, just to make sure it's loud enough. Yeah. All right. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were well-wishers and intimate friends of the Yadu dynasty. This meeting of the two parties after a long separation was a very touching incident. All the Yadus of the residents of Vrindavan felt such great pleasure in meeting and talking together that it was a unique scene. Meeting after long separation, they were all jubilant, their hearts throbbed, and their faces appeared like freshly bloomed lotus flowers. Drops of tears fell from their eyes, the hair on their bodies stood on end, and because of their extreme ecstasy, they were temporarily speechless. In other words, they dove into the ocean of happiness. While the men were meeting that way, the women also met one another in the same manner. They embraced one another in great friendship, smiling very mildly, and looked at one another with much affection. When they were embracing one another in their arms, the saffron and kumkum spread on their breasts was exchanged from one person to another, and they all felt heavenly ecstasy. Due to such heart-to-heart embracing, torrents of tears glided down their cheeks. The juniors were offering obeisances to the elders, and the elders were offering their blessings to the juniors. Thus they welcomed one another and asked after one another's welfare. Ultimately, however, all their talk was only of Krishna. All the neighbors and relatives were connected with Lord Krishna's pastimes in this world, and as such, Krishna was the center of all their activities. Whatever activities they performed, social, political, religious, or conventional, were transcendental. The real elevation of human life rests on knowledge and renunciation. As stated in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service rendered to Krishna automatically produces perfect knowledge and renunciation. That's Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Asu Vairagyam Gyanam Chaya Hoitikam, which says the same thing that Prabhupada just said in the last sentence. The family members of the Yadu dynasty and the cowards of Vrindavan had their minds fixed on Krishna. That is a symptom of perfect knowledge. And because their minds were always engaged in Krishna, they were automatically freed from all material activities. This stage of life is called Yukta Vairagya, as enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Knowledge and renunciation, therefore, do not mean dry speculation and renunciation of activities. Rather, one must start speaking and acting only in relationship with Krishna. In this meeting at Kurukshetra, Kunti Devi and Vasudeva, who were sister and brother, met after a long separation, along with their respective sons and daughters-in-law, children, and other family members. By talking among themselves, they soon forgot all their past miseries. Kunti Devi especially addressed her brother Vasudeva as follows: "My dear brother, I am very unfortunate because not one of my desires has ever been fulfilled. Otherwise, how could it happen that although I have such a saintly brother as you, perfect in all respects, you did not inquire for me as to how I was passing my days in a distressed condition of life?" It appears that Kunti Devi was remembering the miserable days when she had been banished with her sons through the mischievous plans of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. She continued, "My dear brother, I can understand that when providence goes against someone, even one's nearest relatives forget him. In such a condition, even one's father, one's mother, or one's own children will forget him. Therefore, my dear brother, I do not accuse you." Whew. This is like a guilt trip she's playing right now on Vasudeva. Vasudeva replied to his sister, "My dear sister, do not be sorry, and do not blame me in that way. We should always remember that we are all only toys in the hands of Providence. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is under his control only that all kinds of fruitive actions and their reactions take place. My dear sister, you know that we were very much harassed by King Kongsa, and by his persecutions we were scattered here and there. We were always full of anxieties. Only in the last few days have we returned to our own places by the grace of God. After this conversation, Vasudeva and Ugrasena received the kings who came to see them, and they warmly welcomed them all. Seeing Lord Krishna present on the spot, all the visitors felt transcendental pleasure and became very peaceful. Some of the prominent visitors were as follows: Bhishmadeva, Dronacharya, Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, Gandhari along with her sons, King Yudhisthira along with his wife, and the Pandavas along with Kunti, as well as Sanjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Varata, Bhishmaka, King Nagnajit, Purajit, Drupada, Shalya, Drishtaketu, the king of Kashi, Damagosh, Vishalaksha, the king of Mithila, the king of Madras, formerly known as Madra, the king of Kekaya, Yudha, Manu, Shusharma, Bhoriga, along with his sons and many other rulers subordinate to King Yudhisthira. When the visitors saw our Lord Krishna with his thousands of queens, they were fully satisfied at the sight of such beauty and transcendental opulence. All who were there personally visited Balaram and Krishna, and being properly welcomed by them, they began to glorify the members of the Yadu dynasty, especially Krishna and Balaram. Because Ugrasena was the king of the Bhojas, he was considered the chief Yadu, and therefore the visitors specifically addressed him. Your Majesty, Ugrasena, king of the Bhojas. Factually, the Yadus are the only persons within this world who are perfect in all respects. All glories unto you, all glories unto you. The specific condition of your perfection is that you always see Lord Krishna, who is sought by many mystic yogis undergoing severe austerities and penances for a great number of years. All of you are in direct touch with Lord Krishna at every moment. All the Vedic hymns glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The Ganges water is considered sanctified because of its being the water used to wash the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The Vedic scriptures are nothing but the injunctions of Lord Krishna. The purpose of the study of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Therefore, the words of Krishna and the message of his pastimes are always purifying. By the influence of time and circumstances, all the opulences of this world were almost completely wiped out. But since Krishna has appeared on this planet, all auspicious features have again appeared due to the touch of his lotus feet. Because of his presence, all our ambitions and desires are gradually being fulfilled. Your Majesty, King of the Bhojas, you are related with the Yadu dynasty by matrimonial relationship and by blood relationship also. As a result, you are constantly associated with Lord Krishna, and you have no difficulty in seeing him or touching him at any time. Lord Krishna moves with you, talks with you, sits with you, rests with you, and dines with you. The Yadus appear to be always engaged in worldly affairs, which are considered to be the royal road to hell. But due to the presence of Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead in the Vishnu category, who is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all of you are factually relieved from all material contamination and are situated in the transcendental position of liberation and Brahman existence. When Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan had heard that Krishna would be present in Kurukshetra because of the solar eclipse, and that all the members of the Yadu dynasty would also be there, they had immediately prepared to go there. King Nanda, accompanied by his coward men, had loaded all their necessary paraphernalia on bullock carts, and all of the Vrindavan residents had come to Kurukshetra to see their beloved sons, Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna. When the coward men of Vrindavan arrived at Kurukshetra, all the members of the Yadu dynasty were most pleased. As soon as they saw the residents of Vrindavan, they stood up to welcome them and appeared to have regained their life. All the Yadus and Vrindavana residents had been very eager to meet, and when they actually came forward and met, they embraced one another to their heart's satisfaction, and remained in embrace for a considerable time. As soon as Vasudeva saw Nanda Maharaj, Vasudeva jumped up and ran over to him and embraced him very affectionately. Vasudeva began to narrate his own past history, how he had been imprisoned by King Kamsa, how his babies had been killed, how immediately after Krishna's birth he had carried Krishna to the place of Nanda Maharaj, and how Krishna and Balaram had been raised by Nanda Maharaj and his queen Yashoda as their own children. Similarly, Lord Balaram and Krishna also embraced King Nanda, Mother Yashoda, and then they offered their respect unto their lotus feet by bowing down. Because of their feeling affection for Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Krishna and Balaram became choked up, and for a few seconds they could not speak. The most fortunate King Nanda and Mother Yashoda placed their sons on their laps and began to embrace them to their full satisfaction. Because of separation from Krishna and Balaram, King Nanda and Yashoda had been merged in great distress for a long time. Now, after meeting them and embracing them, all their sufferings were mitigated. After this, Krishna's mother Devaki and Balaram's mother Rohini both embraced Mother Yashoda. They said, "My dear Queen Yashoda Devi, you and Nanda Maharaj have been great friends to us, and when we remember you, we are immediately overwhelmed by the thought of your friendly activities. We are so indebted to you that even if we were to return your benediction by giving you the opulence of the King of Heaven, it would not be enough to repay you for your friendly behavior. We shall never forget your kindly behavior toward us. When Krishna and Balaram were born, before they even saw their real father and mother, they were entrusted to your care, and you raised them as your own children, fostering them as birds to take care of their offspring in the nest. You have nicely fed, nourished, and loved them, and have performed many auspicious religious ceremonies for their benefit. Actually, they are not our sons. They belong to you. Nanda Maharaj and you are the real father and mother of Krishna Balaram," which is actually true. As long as they were under your care, they had not even a pinch of difficulty. Under your protection, they were completely out of the way of all kinds of fear. This most affectionate care which you have taken for them is completely befitting your elevated position. The most noble personalities do not discriminate between their own sons and the sons of others, and there cannot be any personalities more noble than Nanda Maharaj and you. As far as the gopis of Vrindavan were concerned, from the very beginning of their lives, they did not know anything beyond Krishna. Krishna and Balaram were their life and soul. The gopis were so attached to Krishna that they could not tolerate not seeing him even a moment or momentarily when their eyelids blinked and impeded their vision. They condemned Brahma, the creator of the body, because he foolishly made eyelids which blinked and checked their seeing Krishna. Actually, they wanted eyes like fish. They were always open. Because they had been separated from Krishna for so many years, the gopis, having come along with Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, felt intense ecstasy upon seeing Krishna. No one can even imagine how eager the gopis were to see Krishna again. As soon as Krishna became visible to them, they took him inside their hearts through their eyes and embraced him to their full satisfaction. It means internally, not externally. Even though they were embracing Krishna only mentally, they became so ecstatic and overwhelmed with joy that for the time being they completely forgot themselves. The ecstatic trance they achieved simply by mentally embracing Krishna is impossible to achieve even for great yogis constantly engaged in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna could understand that the gopis were wrapped in ecstasy by embracing him in their minds, and therefore, since he is present in everyone's heart, he reciprocated the embracing from within. Krishna was sitting with Mother Yashoda and his other mothers, Devaki and Rohini, but when the mothers engaged in talking, he took the opportunity and went to a secluded place to meet the gopis. As soon as he approached the gopis, the Lord smiled, and after embracing them and inquiring about their welfare, he began to encourage them, saying, "My dear friends, you know that Lord Balaram and I left Vrindavan just to please our relatives and family members. Thus we were long engaged in fighting with our enemies, and were obliged to forget you, who were so much attached to me in love and affection. I can understand that I have been ungrateful to you, but still I know that you are faithful to me. May I inquire if you have been thinking of me, although I had to leave you behind? My dear gopis, do you now dislike remembering me? considering me to have been ungrateful to you? Do you take my misbehavior with you very seriously? Oh my God. After all, you should know that it was not my intention to leave you. Our separation was ordained by Providence, who after all is the supreme controller and does as he desires. He causes the intermingling of different persons and again disperses them as he desires. Sometimes we see that a strong wind will mingle together clouds, atomic particles of dust, or broken pieces of cotton, and after the strong wind subsides, all the clouds, particles of dust, and pieces of cotton are again separated, scattered in different places. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the creator of everything. The objects we see are different manifestations of his energy. By his supreme will, we are sometimes united and sometimes separated. We can therefore conclude that ultimately we are absolutely dependent on his will. Of course, Krishna is the supreme personality Godhead, and he is the time factor, etc., like that. So he arranged this so the gopis could feel more intense separation, so there would be more connection. Because in separation from Krishna, there's actually connection. There's more connection than when one is meeting with Krishna. We talked about this morning. Krishna actually promised at one point, and he sent messages through Uddhava and Balaram that he was coming. And the gopis were experiencing purva rag, like anticipating Krishna coming, but he didn't come. So that was a purva rag that didn't actually come to fruition. Fortunately, you have developed loving affection for me, which is the only way to achieve the transcendental position of associating with me. Any living entity who develops such unalloyed devotional affection for me certainly at the end goes back home, back to Godhead. In other words, unalloyed devotional service and affection for me are the causes of supreme liberation. My dear gopi friends, you may know from me that it is my energies only which are acting everywhere. Take, for example, an earthen pot. It is nothing but a combination of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. It is always of the same physical composition, whether in its beginning, during its existence, or after its annihilation. When it is created, the earthen pot is made of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. While it remains, it is the same in composition. And when it is broken or annihilated, its different ingredients are conserved in different parts of the material energy. Similarly, at the creation of this cosmic manifestation during its maintenance and after its dissolution, everything is but a different manifestation of my energy, and because the energy is not separate from me, it is to be concluded that I am existing in everything. It's this type of philosophy the gopis didn't appreciate that much. In the same way, it's like preaching to someone who's experienced extreme emotions. It doesn't work. In the same way, the body of a living entity is nothing but a composition of the five elements, and the living entity embodied in the material condition is also part and parcel of me. The living entity is imprisoned in the material condition on account of his false conception of himself as the supreme enjoyer. There's the reason why we're in prison. This false ego of the living entity is the cause of his imprisonment in material existence. As the supreme absolute truth, I am transcendental to the living entity as well as to his material embodiment. The two energies, material and spiritual, both act under my supreme control. My dear gopis, I request that instead of being afflicted, you try to accept everything with a philosophical attitude. Then you will understand that you are always with me and that there is no cause of lamentation in our being separated from one another. This important instruction by Lord Krishna to the gopis can be utilized by all devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. The whole philosophy is considered on the basis of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he is present everywhere in his impersonal feature. Everything exists in him, but still he is not personally present everywhere. He's everywhere in terms of his energy. The cosmic manifestation is nothing but a display of Krishna's energy, and because the energy is not different but energetic, nothing is different from Krishna. Not different is also different. When this absolute consciousness, Krishna consciousness, is absent, we are separated from Krishna. But fortunately, if this Krishna consciousness is present, then we are not separated from Krishna. The process of devotional service is the revival of Krishna consciousness And if the devotee is fortunate enough to understand that the material energy is not separate from Krishna, then he can utilize the material energy and his products in the service of the Lord. But in the absence of Krishna consciousness, the forgetful living entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, falsely puts himself in the position of enjoyer of the material world, and being thus implicated in material entanglement, is forced by the material energy to continue his material existence. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Although a living entity is forced to act by the material energy, he falsely thinks that he is the all in all and the supreme enjoyer. If the devotee knows perfectly well that the archa vigraha, or deity form of Lord Krishna in the temple, is exactly the same as Satchidananda Vigraha, Brahma Samhita 5.1, as Krishna himself, then his service to the temple deity becomes direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, the temple itself, the temple paraphernalia, and the food offered to the deity are also not separate from Krishna. One has to follow the rules and regulations prescribed by the acharyas, and thus under superior guidance, Krishna realization is fully possible, even in this material world. The gopis, having been instructed by Krishna in this philosophy of simultaneous oneness and difference, remained always in Krishna consciousness, and thus became liberated from all material contamination. The consciousness of the living entity who falsely presents himself as the enjoyer of the material world is called jiva kosha, which means imprisonment by the false ego. Not only the gopis, but anyone who follows these instructions of Krishna is immediately freed from the jiva kosha imprisonment. A person in full Krishna consciousness is always liberated from false egoism. He utilizes everything for Krishna's service and is not at any time separated from Krishna. The gopis therefore prayed to Krishna, "Dear Krishna, from your navel emanates the original lotus flower, which is the birth site of Brahma the Creator. No one can estimate your glories or your opulence, which therefore remain always a mystery even to the highest thoughtful men, the masters of all yogic power. However, the conditioned soul, fallen in the dark well of this material existence, can very easily take shelter of your lotus feet. Thus his deliverance is guaranteed." The gopis continued, "Dear Krishna, we are always busy in our family affairs. We therefore request that you remain within our hearts as the rising sun. That will be your greatest benediction." The gopis are always liberated souls because they are fully in Krishna consciousness. They only pretended to be entangled in household affairs in Vrindavan. Because of their separation from Krishna, he might have asked them to return with him to his capital city, Dwarka. But the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, were not interested in the idea of going with Krishna to Dwarka. They wanted to remain busy in Vrindavan and thus feel the presence of Krishna in every step of their lives. They immediately invited Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. This transcendental emotional existence of the gopis is the basic principle observed by Lord Chaitanya. Of Lord Chaitanya's teaching. The Rath Yatra festival observed by Lord Chaitanya is the emotional process of taking Krishna back to Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani refused to go with Krishna to Dwarka to enjoy his company in the atmosphere of royal opulence, for she wanted to enjoy his company in the original Vrindavan atmosphere. Lord Krishna, being profoundly attached to the gopis, never goes away from Vrindavan, and the gopis and other residents of Vrindavan remain fully satisfied in Krishna consciousness. This ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 82nd chapter of Krishna. Lord Krishna and Balaram meet the inhabitants of Vrindavana. So, to end, we're going to discuss a little bit about Rath Yatra. Of course, the Rath Yatra is basically signifies the meeting of Krishna with the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan at Kurukshetra in the Samanta Panchakap. And what happens is the gopis are begging Krishna to go back to Vrindavan because they can't relate to Krishna as he appears. I mean, they can relate to him, but they can't really feel that close to Krishna as he appears at Kurukshetra. Because outside of Vrindavan, Krishna manifests himself, although the same Krishna, Ajam Puran Purusham Navayovanam Cha. It's the same Krishna, there's no difference, but his manifestation is completely different outside of Vrindavan. There's no flute, there's no like intimate exchanges. I mean, he has beauty, but not the same beauty that he has in Vrindavan, or manifests in Vrindavan. I wouldn't say has, or manifests in Vrindavan. And the devotees can't experience the same depths of that unalloyed, spontaneous love outside of Vrindavan. So just like there's this famous verse that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would recite. Lord Chaitanya himself, of course, is Krishna in the mood of Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya would recite this verse during the Rath Yatra ceremony, talking to Lord Jagannath. You are the same Krishna, I'm the same Radharani, but I desire to enjoy with you beneath the a tree of a Vatasi tree on the banks of the Jamuna. In other words, they really wanted to bring Krishna back home. I mean, for example, let me give a mundane example. Let's say a wife goes to visit her husband at the workplace. At the workplace, let's say he's the boss or the president of some particular country. She comes and she says, come back home, honey. Because that's where the enjoyment is. At the workplace, he has to have a different mood. He can't just hang around with his wife all the time. It just wouldn't work. He's dressed in his tie and jacket, sitting behind his desk. He may say hello to his wife. He may say, whatever. And even if he says to his wife, just stay here at the workplace, you could have a job. You'll give you a job. Amazon or something like that. You could have a job too. The wife's not interested. Because then, if she was in the workplace, she would be an employee. Employees generally do not have an intimate relationship. That would be a conflict of interest with the boss. Their employees is, more awe and reverence towards the boss. So in the same way, the wife wants to have the husband back home, where there's much more give and take, and she can even take a superior position in relationship to the husband. Sometimes chastising the husband, and then he just listens to her. But in the workplace, it's not going to happen like that. He is the boss in the workplace. So Krishna outside of Vrindavan is the boss. He's God. In Vrindavan, he's still God, but he doesn't manifest himself as God. So the Rath Yatra ceremony, it signifies the gopis attempting to drag Krishna back to Vrindavan. And Vrindavan is manifested during the Rath Yatra as the Gundicha temple. And we have this wonderful pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cleansing the Gundicha temple, which signifies that if one wants to enter into Vrindavan, one's heart has to be completely pure. Vishayacharya Kabi Shuddhahabe Mana Kabe Hama He Rabo Sri Vrindavana, as Narottama Das Thakur states. When one's mind is completely purified, Vishaya Chadiya Kavi Shuddhahabe Mana, then one's mind can actually enter and manifest Vrindavan. So anyway, the Gundicha temple represents Vrindavan, and when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates went during the Rath Yatra to the Gundicha temple, which represents Vrindavan, they became, let's say, much more, for lack of a better word, spontaneous in their relationship with each other, like children, basically, even though they were all adults. And they had water fights with each other. We had Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in the water fights. We had Lord Nityananda fighting with the Dvaitacharya in the water, splashing water in the Rendra Sarovara. So many wonderful things happened during that particular pastime. And then, of course, Krishna gets dragged back to Dwarka or Kurukshetra, and that's the return yatra, to the Puri temple. Of course, 5 days after the actual Rath Yatra to the Gundicha temple, the goddess of fortune who was actually Rukmini Devi, and Satyabhama and the wives of Krishna, they attack Krishna and try to get him back, but it doesn't come back right away. So anyway, so that's Rath Yatra, and what we're reading today is the original Rath Yatra, from which the Rath Yatra that we celebrate is modeled. And anyone who pulls the cart of Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra is actually assisting the gopis in dragging Krishna to Vrindavan. Okay, so on that happy note, we finished the chapter, so we will be able to take questions in a second. Okay, you can unmute yourselves, you can raise your hand, or you can, oh, okay, there's Rakesh, she has something to say. What's up, Rakesh?
I've got a couple of questions, brother. I've been reading the Krishna book in my spare time, and I do have some questions. One of the questions from previous chapter is, when King Yudhishthir went to take bath in the Ganges, many professional prostitutes were smearing liquid substance on the bodies of men and vice versa. How do you explain that when he went to take bath in the Ganges, the professional prostitutes were there? Like, does that word mean something different?
All right. So at that time, Prabhupada explains that even in the Vedic culture, there were professional prostitutes. That is, of course, that's not a repetitive. A prostitute is a professional. Anyway, Prabhupada also said what you call girlfriends in the West are prostitutes. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that because people get offended if I say anything, which I already said. I probably offended half the devotees here. So anyway, yeah, there are prostitutes in the Vedic culture because there were men who were Shudra class, and anyway, we didn't. Prabhupada explains they should not be contaminating ordinary girls, so there were prostitutes. You know, that was sometimes describes the world's oldest occupation. So they were there, and how do I explain that? I don't know. That's the way it was. That's the way
That
it was.
explains.
And of course, I'm not going to allow that in the Krishna consciousness movement. So, okay, any other questions, Rakesh?
That's it, Gurudev. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think Krishna Priya Devi Dasi has a question.
Yes, Gurudev, please accept my obeisances. So when we're reading this, and there's so many different prayers that are being said and conversations, can we also understand that like some things are coming directly from the Acharya's commentaries, and that some of things are coming from it's like Srila Prabhupada's, it's his commentary also on the 10th canto?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Krishna book.
Yeah, I mean, some things are coming from the commentaries. I mean, that particular chapter I haven't read the Acharya's commentaries on yet. So, you know, what is coming from the Acharyas, what is there, the original Sanskrit of the Bhagavatam, and what's there in Prabhupada's, I mean, we'll have to see. But yeah, sure. I mean, these are realizations of the Acharyas, just like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. When you have that whole story, let's give an example of the Aristashura story and the creation of Radha Kund. I mean,
Yeah.
the details that we know about are mainly from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur,
Yes.
not there in the original text of the Bhagavatam,
Mm-mm.
but he elaborates on that. So anyway, the Acharya's commentaries are realized commentaries and real. They're real. That's really what happened. So we don't distinguish. Actually, the commentaries make an integral part, are an integral part of the Bhagavatam. We can't separate them from the actual.
Exactly.
And in fact, the Bhagavatam itself is a running commentary on the original 4 verses spoken by Lord Krishna to Lord Brahma. The nutshell verses, Aham Evatsavebhagre Nandayatchatasapuram. Before this creation, there was I, the Supreme Personality of God. So in other words, the Bhagavatam keeps getting expanded. Just like you have the Bhagavatam that was spoken, I mean, just an example of that is the Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, but then you have additional verses in the Bhagavatam that are Sutta Goswami speaking to the sages in Naimisharanya that form an integral part of the Bhagavatam. So you have, part of the Bhagavatam, then it's added on and added on. So the Acharyas actually add on to the Bhagavatam by their commentaries, and certainly Sutta Goswami added on to the Bhagavatam by his preaching to the sages in Naimisharanya. So anyway, okay, so that's good.
Thinking, Gurudev, that it's so, I was thinking how it's like so kind of amazing how Srila Prabhupada was able to take this and just like make such like a tasteful presentation, like really easy reading and for people to grasp, but at the same time get the philosophy. It's just, to me, it seems very interesting in that sense how Prabhupada was able to combine all those different parts.
Yeah, Prabhupada was able to integrate everything into a storybook and the prayers and everything like that into the storybook. Yeah, it's just like, Prabhupada did it because he wasn't sure that he'd be able to finish the 10th canto. In fact, Prabhupada did not finish the 10th canto. It was his disciples who finished the 10th canto. And Prabhupada felt it essential that we have the pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto before he left this planet. So the Krishna book was one of the first books he actually worked on. It's actually the first book that I read in the Krishna consciousness movement was Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. I mean,
It's the first one that I saw too.
I
The
had read
first book I saw.
Yeah, I had read the Bhagavad Gita, but not Prabhupada's Gita before, but the Krishna book was the first. And that was one of the things that attracted me tremendously. Okay, nice questions, Krishna Priya. So, anybody else have a question? You could type in the chat window. You can unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand and be called on like a good student.
Gurudev, I have another questions.
All right.
Gurudev, it says in the previous chapter, and I've heard that Ganges water washes Krishna's feet.
Yes.
Sometimes it says it originates from his feet. So what is the truth?
Same thing. The Ganges water came into this universe because he kicked a hole in the universe. So it originates in this universe from Krishna's feet, and it also washes Krishna's feet. Same thing.
Where does it get? It kicked a hole in this world. So it
already comes from the causal ocean. Ganges extensively comes from the causal ocean, and it comes and washes Krishna's feet when it enters into the material world. So in other words, Krishna's feet are the origin of the Ganges in the material world. Although the Ganges itself is eternally existent, the spiritual Ganges is eternally existent, coexistent with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay?
Thank you, Gurudev.
So, yes, interesting question. So, all right. Now is your time. Oh, no, it's not your time. So, Mukha, you have a question.
Yes, Gurudev. In the scripture says, in Kali, everyone is born as a Sudra.
That's right.
So in other yugas, Satyug, Dwapar, and Treta, people are born as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, like this?
Yes, they had all these qualities. I mean, of course, you have someone like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, you can't say he actually was born as a Shudra. So you do have exceptions to that. Everybody's born as a Shudra, but there are exceptions to the rule. And the exception to the rule would be like just to the devotees. Well, in fact, we can't even say that they were born, they appeared. So that's the way to get out of that exception. Yes, Chanmana Jayate Shudra Samskara Bhavattvijam. One can only become a higher caste or Brahmin caste by the proper samskara, which means reformatory practice or association, impression. That's what samskara means. Samskara, perfect work. Actually, samskara kriti. When you have sam means complete, skara means kara, which means work, like kriti or even karma. So perfect work, which means perfect impression that creates on the subtle body. Okay? So therefore, you have to keep good associations. You remain a Brahmin. Okay, we have to end now. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see hopefully everybody tomorrow. I'm traveling, but I think I'll be able to give the class at the same time because we'll be at our destination, which will be in New Taliban, hopefully. New Taliban, Mississippi, Mississippi, if you remember how to spell it. New Taliban, Mississippi, not Mississippi, Mississippi. Okay, all glories to Divine